Welcome to the LDS Mental Health Podcast. This is a podcast for faithful women who want healing in their relationships, guidance from God, and internal peace. Each week, you'll hear mental health concepts taught through a spiritual lens from me, a licensed clinical mental health counselor, to help you start thinking in a higher and holier way. Welcome. On this episode, we will be discussing why working on your self-esteem isn't necessary. So the theme this month is titled Unpopular Opinions from a Therapist, for good reason. That's because I'm going to talk about some topics that not every therapist would agree with. And guess what? That's okay. It's actually a good thing that not every therapist has the exact same approach. We are unique people, and not every approach will fit what you need. Now, the unpopular opinions I will talk about this month are developed through my knowledge of teaching a mindfulness approach taught through a spiritual lens. Other modalities like behavior modification or cognitive approaches differ in their approach to mental health. There are some similarities, but there's also places where they take different paths. And my hope with this series is to help show you a different approach to mental health and help you identify if this type of approach is one that would fit your needs. So today I want to talk about one of those different paths or approaches that is taken when you look at mental health through a spiritual lens. So by the end of this podcast episode, you will see an alternative perspective to why working on self-esteem might not actually be necessary. And I'll actually point you in the direction of what is necessary to focus on. So let's go on a journey and start with what the world defines self-esteem as and why that's not necessary for you to focus on. Sometimes I think that people just use buzzwords that they hear and they feel like that will be the thing that will help them. So starting with common ground on what we're actually talking about, I think will help you see where I'm coming from. If you look up self-esteem in the dictionary, it's really defined as a confidence in one's own self-worth and how you value and perceive yourself. So let's start off by talking about that part where it says self-esteem is how we value and perceive ourselves. The problem with working on how you value and perceive yourself is that it's based on your opinions and beliefs about yourself. If you take that perspective of judging how you perceive yourself as a person through the lens of the world, what are you going to gauge that by? Typically, this turns into valuing your self-esteem as something to be earned. For example, if you perform better, then you'll feel better about yourself. So you go out and try and do more and more to rate yourself more highly, and this will cause you to feel better. Feeling better is therefore our psychological reward for performing better. Usually, it's also supposed to cause us in turn to perform even better. And this can be a vicious cycle of never feeling like you measure up or have any worth or value because it turns into a moving target that you never really meet or hit. Do you ever feel that way sometimes? Like you're trying to hit this moving target that you never hit? Now, trying to perform better for the sake of improving isn't inherently bad. We are here on this earth to continue to grow. The problem comes when the improvement comes to increase how we perceive our value. The simple truth through the lens of the gospel is that you have inherent worth and value that can't be changed. In Doctrine and Covenants 18:10, it says, "Remember the worth of souls is great in the sight of God." You can't change your worth and value in the eyes of God. It's always there. Trying to perform better to perceive that worth and value is a dangerous slope. Also, it takes God out of the equation. You don't have to become better at anything to connect to and understand your worth and value. At any moment, you can connect with the Spirit and understand who you really are, which is a child of God with infinite worth and value. Looking to perceive your worth and value in the world is a setup for failure. Looking to perceive your worth and value in God is immediate and sustaining. President Monson actually said, "Your Heavenly Father loves you, each of you. That love never changes. It's not influenced by your appearance, by your possessions, by the amount of money you have in your bank account. It is not changed by your talents, your abilities. It is simply there. It is there for you when you are sad or happy, discouraged, or hopeful. God's love is there for you whether or not you feel you deserve love. It's simply always there." So looking at it from this perspective, do you need to quote unquote work on self-esteem? I would say you don't. You need to understand self-worth. Those are two very different things. Now, I want to address the other part of the definition, which is confidence in your own self-worth. Gauging your confidence in your own self-worth requires, first of all, a sensible way to measure it, right? And most investigators or tools just simply ask people what they think of themselves. Naturally, the answers are often colored by the common tendency to want to make yourself either look good or to be humble and not really state how you feel. We call this really a subjective measure. Just asking someone how they feel about their self-worth isn't a great measure. Unfortunately, psychologists just lack good methods to judge self-esteem. What this usually turns into is gauging your own self-worth by comparing yourself to other people. This can be a tricky road to go down because it asserts that one person is better than another. So you're often looking for people who are that you're better than to increase your confidence in your self-worth. Or you see someone who you perceive is better than you, and your confidence in your self-worth decreases. Remember that everyone has different strengths and weaknesses, and that comparisons are not an accurate measure of anyone's self-worth. If, in the words of Jeffrey R. Holland of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, he said, "We are not diminished when someone else is added upon." He says that feeling envious of others' successes is like downing a quart of pickle juice every time anyone around you has a happy moment. When we're happy for other people, we can understand a little more of how God rejoices in our successes, again, helping us draw closer to our potential. So instead of working on your self-esteem and trying to get more confident in your self-worth, what if you learned self-compassion? Self-compassion is understanding the human experience, or in gospel terms, understanding the plan of salvation. We're here on this earth with a natural man inside of us that pulls us away from God and our knowledge of our self-worth. This is a natural phenomenon, and we aren't less than because it's occurring. This is part of the probationary experience in the plan of salvation, and it's an important part of the plan. Therefore, rather than basing your worth on how you measure up to someone else, what if you worked on turning to Christ, to learn from Him and become more like Him? That is more worth your time and effort than working on your confidence in your own self-worth. And it helps you focus on your worth in the eyes of God. And one last thing I want to address about self-esteem is the term you might often hear, which is low self-esteem, which is also sometimes called being insecure. This term is often used when someone is struggling with negative thoughts or feelings about themselves and starts to doubt who they really are. It's actually an easy trap to fall into. Satan is really good at making you misinterpret negative thoughts and cause you to doubt your own divine nature and purpose. Now, everyone will experience negative thoughts and feelings because we live in a fallen world with fallen bodies and with people who use their agency unrighteously. Also, that natural man I talked about earlier is the culprit for Satan being able to swirl these negative thoughts into a question of whether you have any worth or value at all. This is described in the scripture Mosiah 16:5. It says, But remember that he that persists in his own carnal nature and goes in the ways of sin and rebellion against God remaineth in his fallen state, and the devil hath all power over him. So if we stay in the natural man state, we essentially have an open door to allow Satan in and have power over us. This phenomenon is something we all can experience. It doesn't mean we're insecure or we have low self-esteem. It means we're listening to the wrong source when we're experiencing negative thoughts and emotions. Instead of focusing on the terminology the world gives you and say that you are insecure or just have low self-esteem, what if you learn to recognize the natural phenomenon that's happening and shift over to the right source, Christ, for healing, compassion, and guidance? So truly, my unpopular opinion is that working on your self-esteem creates a formula that results in the promotion of unhelpful comparisons with others, trying to outperform on the daily, and focusing in the wrong places to increase your self-worth. This type of work isn't necessary. Instead, what if you worked on understanding where self-worth comes from, learning more about the plan of salvation and its purpose in your life, and working on receiving Christ and not the world? That type of work is sustaining, fulfilling, and worth the effort. Don't get caught up in the buzzwords of the world and take God out of your life. Pull him in to understand what you are experiencing. If you like that approach, if you want some more practical resources to implement some of those concepts, then you might be interested in my LDS Mental Health Skills Deck. I created a deck of 52 skills cards that help you strengthen and fortify your mental health through a gospel lens so that you can have some more clarity in your thoughts for peace and cope with life's stresses, so that you can receive divine help to increase your energy and work productively, and that you can learn to communicate your needs and desires to connect and improve relationships. And you'll also learn to process your emotions to create healing and have better self-care. I created the card deck as an affordable way to start your journey of learning mental health skills through a spiritual lens. They are currently in production and should soon be in the mail, I hope. So if you want to be notified when they arrive and receive a discount to use, then I'll put the link in to the waitlist for the skills deck in my show notes. You can drop your name and email address in there, and as soon as they're ready to ship, I'll send you an email with a little discount, and you can get on your way starting to feel that confidence through Christ. All right, hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you for listening to the LDS Mental Health Podcast. I hope you were able to find ways of healing, guidance, and peace. If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend who would love to start thinking in a higher and holier way as well. Or hit that follow button so you don't miss out on any episodes. Also, check out the links in my show notes for other episodes you might like and links for other mental health resources on my website.